Hello, everyone. This is Kevin T. Rodriguez, film critic of iCritic.net, and let's talk about Iron Fist's Rotten Tomato score. Because here's the thing: people have been talking on the internet, and some have even asked me in person, "Is the show really that bad?" I mean, 17% on Rotten Tomatoes. That's getting pretty close to Fantastic Four, the reboot, and like Catwoman and stuff. I mean, is the show really that bad? And let me tell you something about Iron Fist. I guess you can call this a little mini Iron Fist review as well as editorial. We need to point out a few variables in this, but ultimately the 17% seems right, even though when you think about the Rotten Tomatoes score the way you probably think about it, it's not that bad, but then the Rotten Tomatoes score doesn't actually reflect quality. And I know I'm going to have to explain that in a moment, and I will do the best that I can. First of all, let's discuss the elephant in the room. Yes, Iron Fist is not a good show. It's not a good show. It's very boring a lot of the time. It feels like there's a lot of filler. I'm not even entirely sure what it's about, and I've watched the whole show because it keeps changing its focus so many times. But is it 17% bad? I can't go there, and here's why. You have to keep in mind that Rotten Tomatoes' biggest problem is that it really is just a number. The statistic is not grading the quality of the movie. It is just taking how many critics liked it and how many critics didn't like it. Some of the critics who wrote their Iron Fist reviews admitted that they only watched the first episode or they didn't get past episode 6, and it does pick up a little after episode 6, I'm not going to lie. And that's a problem, but had they continued to watch the show, would they have ultimately given it a positive review? And I'm under the impression that no, I don't think they would have, because it still was not that great of a show when you got down to it. So whether it was an extremely negative review or a mildly negative review, it would have counted as a negative review. The Rotten Tomatoes, if I remember, had 53 counted reviews. And of the 53, 43 were negative. Only 10 were positive. If I remember the number. I mean, I'm going to have the screenshot up there so you can see if I got it wrong. But obviously, that just means there were more negative reviews than there were positive reviews. This is why Rotten Tomatoes and Metacritic are actually good to use in union. Because, for example, The Avengers got like a 92%. Now, that's like Godfather level numbers. But the average review was 3 to 3.5 stars, out of 5. Which is like, that's good, but it's not great. And that's kind of where I was. I gave it a 3.5 star review, I believe. But it counts towards a 92% on Rotten Tomatoes because it's a positive review. So that is where the main problem with Rotten Tomatoes comes in. When you see only 17% of people gave Iron Fist a positive review, that sounds like the critics thrashed it. Like they crucified this thing. But when you read the reviews themselves, most of the critics were just merely not very impressed with what they saw. I mean, I read a good portion of the reviews, and there were very, very few that outright said this was like the worst thing they'd ever seen. Most of them were just like, it's boring, and they gave it 2.5 stars. That's far from that does not suggest a 17% score. But again, they're just counting the positives and the negative reviews. You need to actually read reviews, and you also use Metacritic to find out what the average score was, because that's just how it works. Now, like, for example, when you go to like Inside Out, which got like a 99% Rotten Tomatoes, you go to Rotten Tomatoes, the weighted scores that got on average 4 to 5 stars. So that was wildly successful. And yet it's only 6%, 7% more than the Avengers, which when you actually read those reviews, the reviews are positive but not enthusiastic. So that is why the Rotten Tomatoes score is so low. That is also why it seems like the critics crucified it, but they really didn't. They just were not impressed. And whether it's because they only watched part of the show or the whole show, they didn't like it. They wrote a negative review, and Rotten Tomatoes just reflects that. If you read the Fantastic Four reviews for any of the movies, you'll notice that the reviews are much, much more savage and far less kind to those movies because those were truly awful movies. I'm sorry. I hate when the phone does that. But that is why Iron Fist Rotten Tomatoes score is so low, even though it's really not the worst thing you're gonna see in the world. I personally wouldn't recommend it. Like I said, I think it's boring. I think there's a lot of filler. I mean, the show keeps coming up with new ways for why he can't use his Iron Fist, which would solve so many problems. That's like an idiot plot in my opinion when you have a weapon and you can't use it. Like it's like because if you actually use your weapon, things would get resolved sooner, and I guess we can't have that. I don't know. Just stupid show to me. But if I were to give it a star grade, which I won't, well, okay, I'll give it to you now, even though I'm not going to write a review for it because it's television. I review movies on my website, but 2.5 stars. I mean, really, had a few changes been made, it would have been a recommendation, but that's like a far cry from the 4.5 stars I would have given Daredevil season 1 and Jessica Jones season 1, and the 4 stars I would have given Luke Cage, and the 3.5 I would have given for Daredevil season 2, because season 2 was unfortunately quite a bit of a step down. But yeah, Iron Fist, not a good show in my opinion. So I don't know, but what do you guys think? Does that make sense to you? Do you still disagree? Do you like the show? And if you do, why do you like the show? I'm not saying this to make fun of you. I am genuinely interested. There were good moments. I'd like to know what those good moments were for you, so just comment below. Like, favorite, share, subscribe, and as always, flame responsibly. Have a good one.